This budget resolution marks the first step for House Republicans to advance President Trump's America First agenda. We've heard plenty of fear-mongering and flat-out dishonesty from Democrats and their liberal media allies about what is included in this resolution. To be clear, this resolution unlocks the path forward to deliver on our promises to the American people. Over the next hour, you're going to hear all of the identity groups. The Democrats want you to believe this bill hurts. You'll hear them say Republicans are abandoning the middle class and cutting benefits. None of that is true. The truth is there is not one single cut in this bill to any specific program or benefit. The truth is the Democratic Party abandoned the middle class for the liberal elite class a long time ago. The election last November should have been a wake-up call that the American people don't believe them anymore, nor should they. The Democrats are desperate for your attention and for power. Don't give it to them.
Last night in the Rules Committee, the gentlelady claimed, oh, no, Democrats can't prove there are any cuts in this budget. Except, Mr. Speaker, we can. We can. And let me lay it out as simply as I can for people. The Republican budget cuts, for example, $330 billion from programs related to education. And the same guy who wrote this budget, the chair of the Budget Committee, Mr. Arrington, also wrote this document, Mr. Speaker, this document right here, which I have in front of me, which says in black and white that those education cuts include $12 billion from school meals. How dare you? And I'm sorry that she doesn't like these facts, but they are facts. And school meals are just one example. This budget makes deep cuts to Medicaid, including long-term care, deep cuts to food assistance for hungry families, deep cuts to Pell Grants. And these cuts are going to hurt people. So I would just ask the gentlelady a simple question. Whose side are you on? Does she want to stand with the school kids in her district who rely on school meals to get through the day? Or does she side with the billionaires who are getting another tax giveaway in this budget?
I do find it really interesting that the logic, if you follow the logic of those who oppose this bill, what they're suggesting is for the 1,406 rules that the Biden administration passed since August, that they want us to do a bill, and one bill for every one of them. Let's do one bill for every one of them. Now, we could do that. I'm happy to work. If that's what they want to do, let's do it. We can come back next week. I'm happy to work every Saturday and Sunday. That's our job. But they don't really mean it. They don't really mean it, Mr. Chairman, because the reality is, if they meant it, then they wouldn't stack 50 bills into one at a time when they do their omnibus spending packages, the way they always do. That's really interesting. But you know, the value to our economy and the budget of the rules that were implemented by the Biden administration, those 1,400, let me just tell you, this isn't Andy Biggs talking. This isn't some outside group. They claim it's whatever, the 2025 thing. This isn't those guys. It's not any of those folks that said the cost to the economy and the budget is $1.34 trillion. No, that was the Biden administration's own admission. That's what their rules, imposition of their rules would cost. And we'd love to get at that. But you know what? They want us to do 1,400 separate bills. That way, none of their suspension bills where they're naming their post offices after their friends are going to get named. That's just what that happened. Not going to be enough time.
First of all, let me say the gentleman has it all wrong. He said we don't want to come down here and debate all of these one at a time. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. What we don't want you to do is to pack 1,400 regulations into one bill where there's no debate and nobody knows what the hell they're voting on, and the American people don't know the harm that you are about to do to them. And let me just say, with all the urgency that I hear expressed on the other side about all these regulations, a number of CRAs have been introduced, and not a single committee has held a hearing on any of them. Not a single markup, nothing. And so urge you had a month. What the hell are you doing? We have this is not a busy week. We haven't had any busy weeks. This is a very light legislative schedule. I mean, it's incredible how light it is. So it's not like we don't have the time. And, you know, I get it. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that Trump and Elon, as we are speaking, are literally shutting the government down, agency by agency, department by department. I get it. They don't want to talk about that. But that's what's happening right now. I mean, the agencies and departments that are working, that are set up to work for the American people are being shut down. People are being told to stay home, and it's illegal. And courts are now stepping up to the plate. Madam Speaker, a majority of Americans now say that Donald Trump is doing a bad job in handling the economy, and I don't blame them. Prices are going up on everything, in large part because of Trump's tariffs. Meanwhile, wages for workers have not kept pace with inflation for decades. Home ownership is slipping out of the reach for more and more people. And so I will end this debate where we began. Whose side are my Republican colleagues on? Talk is cheap, Madam Speaker. This place runs on hot air from corrupt politicians whose only care in the world is where their next campaign check comes from. Last night in the Rules Committee, Democrats gave Republicans a chance to show whose side they're on. Every single one of them voted against protecting Medicaid so they could give tax breaks to billionaires. That's how they voted. Every single one of them voted against protecting the child tax credit so they could give tax cuts to billionaires. Every single one of them voted against protecting food assistance for hungry families so they could give tax breaks to billionaires. And so the gentlelady can claim whatever she wants. The truth is this budget betrays the middle class in favor of tax giveaways for billionaires. It gives trillions in handouts to the ultra-wealthy, billionaires and greedy corporations to the tune of $314,266 each every year for the top 0.1%, and that's an average. Some of them are going to get millions. That's a bigger giveaway to the ultra-rich than most people make in a year. And to pay for it, they're going to steal from you, the American people. They are stealing from you. They are betraying the people who voted for them. This is a betrayal on a scale I don't think we've ever seen before. And I am going to fight to expose it and to stop it. I've said this over and over and over again. We need tax relief for workers, not the ultra-rich. We need to preserve Social Security and Medicare, not gut them to pay for corporate handouts. We should protect Medicaid and food benefits for working families because we know these programs that people rely on and need when times get tough. So, Madam Speaker,
His time has expired.
Madam Speaker, you can shut me up.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman is not recognized. Gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Last night at the Rules Committee, we caught Democrats dead to rights. A Democrat tried to refer to the alleged, quote, cuts, end quote, in our debate, but instead admitted that, quote, it's not there, end quote. That's right. It's not in the budget resolution. You simply cannot find programmatic cuts in any respect. And I stand here to tell the truth about this budget and the rule we need to get it across the line. From shielding Americans from the greatest tax increase in history to supporting the military, allocating resources to the Trump administration to secure the border, to trimming wasteful programs, our budget resolution has solutions that the American people expect and demand. President Trump specifically requested one big, beautiful bill, and the House Republicans have answered that request with a constructive, full-bodied product. Now let's juxtapose our beautiful bill with the failed reconciliation schemes passed by Democrat Congresses. They used it to pass Obamacare, robbing Medicare of over $700 billion of funds in the process and kicking Americans off their health insurance plans after promising to keep them. They hijacked the process to pass the so-called American Rescue Plan to waste over $2 trillion in taxpayer funds, fueling the greatest inflation rates in generations. And lastly, they used the reconciliation process just a few years ago to pass one of the worst pieces of legislation in the modern era, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. That catastrophe of a bill was a one-way ticket to financial ruin. It wasted money on green energy schemes, punished companies that proudly develop American energy, and ironically drove up costs on every American family.
Mr. Speaker, the gentlelady is talking about what was said in the Rules Committee last night. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about how people voted in the Rules Committee last night. We gave Republicans a chance last night in the Rules Committee. We said if they really don't believe that this budget cuts funding for school meals, if they really believe what they're saying, then they can vote to assure the American people that they're not going to steal school meals from kids in order to give tax breaks for millionaires. Every Republican voted no, every single one of them. Then Democrats offered an amendment to protect Medicaid. And Medicaid, as you know, Mr. Speaker, covers 41% of all births in the United States, nearly half of children with special health care needs, and 5 in 8 nursing home residents. We asked them not to cut Medicaid in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Every Republican voted no. Then Democrats offered an amendment to extend tax cuts for people making under $400,000 while ensuring that corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. We asked Republicans to continue tax cuts for only those who need them the most, because those are the tax cuts they let expire while their tax cuts for greedy corporations were made permanent. We asked them to prioritize working families over greedy corporations. Every Republican voted no. Then Democrats offered an amendment preventing tax giveaways for people earning over $1 million a year. Every Republican voted no. We wanted to see if there was anyone so rich that Republicans don't think they deserve a tax giveaway. So we asked them to vote against tax breaks for people earning over $100 million per year. We asked them to side with factory workers and firefighters over hedge fund managers and billionaire bankers. Every Republican voted no. We even offered an amendment preventing tax cuts for people with a net worth of over, get this, $1 billion. Every Republican voted no. They betrayed their constituents. They voted to steal from the American people in order to protect tax breaks for billionaires. Again, this is about whose side you're on. And Republicans showed us last night with their votes whose side they're on. And it's not the working people of this country. I reserve my time.
So let's set the record straight about what this budget resolution actually accomplishes. It will provide funding for border security, provide for our national defense, and restore American energy independence. It will provide tax relief for working families. On border security, Biden's open border policies resulted in over 8.5 million encounters at the southern border since 2021, a 500% increase in illegal crossings, and over $115 billion in cost to state and local governments. Most tragically, Biden's border crisis allowed unprecedented amounts of deadly fentanyl into our communities, killing over 100,000 Americans. Next, this bill enables us to permanently protect tax relief. President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provided critical relief to middle-class families and small businesses. Americans are still experiencing high prices because we're still recovering from Bidenomics. Prices are up 21%, real wages have declined by more than 3%, mortgage rates have skyrocketed, credit card delinquencies have risen by over 50%. Bidenomics cost American families more than $11,000 every year for the last 4 years. Next, this budget resolution prioritizes energy independence. Under President Trump's first administration, the United States was energy independent for the first time in 40 years. That stopped the day Joe Biden took office, and American families have been hurting ever since.
Mr. Speaker, let me, before I get into my statement, let me begin. I keep on hearing from the other side that this is just a budget resolution, and it doesn't have any actual policies in it. And yet the gentlelady referred to all the tax cuts. Can she point me to where the resolution says anything about tax cuts? Of course, the answer is that it doesn't. What it does is simply instruct our tax writing committees to write legislation to spend $4.5 trillion, just like it instructs our SNAP committee to cut $290 billion and our Medicaid committee to cut $880 billion. You cannot have it both ways and pretend that the harms aren't real while the tax cuts are. But we know the harms are real, and we know what's planned, and we've seen the leaked document. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, it looks like facts and truth have absolutely no place in this administration or in this Republican Party. We already knew that this administration lies like a rug. First, we heard that the United States was sending $50 million worth of condoms to Hamas, which was a lie. Then we heard it was Ukraine that started the war, not Russia. Another lie. Then we heard the terrible plane crash here in Washington happened because of diversity programs. Also a lie. Now the gentlelady from Indiana wants us to believe that not a single thing in the budget she is arguing for is going to hurt anyone at all. That there isn't a single tax giveaway to billionaires in their budget. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? It's simply not accurate. But we all saw this coming. We did. I mean, last month, Trump's inauguration, who was in the front row? It wasn't people on Medicaid. It wasn't factory workers. It wasn't nurses or teachers or firefighters. It wasn't even his own cabinet. It was the richest people in the world. And that is who this Republican budget helps. It steals from taxpayers and funnels the money to those at the very top. Imagine stealing from school meals for kids so that billionaires can get another tax giveaway. Does she stand with the 178,119 constituents in her district that are on Medicaid? Does she stand with the thousands and thousands of kids in her district who rely on school meals? Or does she stand with the greedy corporations who are price gouging struggling families? I know where I stand, Mr. Speaker, and we are going to fight like hell to oppose this awful Republican budget because we know whose side we're on. And we're going to fight like our constituents' lives depend on it, because they do. And with that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to commend the other side for saying, finally, that some of these things that they have been harping on for the last several hours and 24 hours segments is not true. There's nothing in this budget resolution that presumes cuts to specific programs. Our Democrat colleagues admitted this much themselves last night. This legislation simply provides flexible spending targets for authorizing committees to best determine what is feasible within their jurisdiction. I'd like to remind my Democrat colleagues that this resolution is the first step in a process to let reconciliation begin, when the real work will happen in the committees. If my colleagues have concerns about potential cuts being proposed, once the authorizing committees begin their work, there will be ample opportunity to debate, provide amendment, and find opportunities in the reconciliation instructions for common ground. Unlike my friends on the other side, we don't view the Rules Committee as the first stop in the legislative process, but rather the last. We should let the committees do their work and not prejudge the outcomes or make baseless accusations and presumptions. And with that, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to my friend, Mr. Norman. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Congresswoman Houser, for leading this debate. And I rise in full support of the House budget resolution as introduced by Chairman Arrington. And what our viewers, both in the balcony and watching this by TV, are going to see is two different worldviews. My friends on the left think tax money is their money, that you should know where it's spent in any shape, form, or fashion. Where they want to spend our tax dollars that's now being uncovered by Elon Musk is a variety of things, but it began 4 years ago with the invasion of the border. My friends from the left, the minute the Biden administration took office, opened the gates for over 170 different countries to let everybody and anybody in this country. My friends on the left allowed 400,000 unaccompanied minors to come into this country, and we don't know what happened to them. It's not good, though. Where is the sympathy for, they claim to be sympathize for people in this country, but what about the sympathy for the children? They did nothing to stop the invasion at the border. They had words, but that's all it was. They want the American people to know that it's their money to spend on illegal aliens, free college tuition, putting it on the backs of the everyday working man. This is the first step in a long journey of what we're voting on today. The previous Democrat failed leadership, which we had 4 years of, showed nonsense welfare programs which aided the budget, allowing billions of mindless spending. The American people have had enough, which is why we are in the new age of the golden age. Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to speak, and Aaron, thank you for putting this argument up.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, before I yield, there's just a couple of points I want to make. I'm still waiting for the gentlelady from Indiana to tell me where the tax cuts are in this budget. You can't have it both ways. You can't say there's all these tax cuts in this budget and yet there's no cuts. The reality is there are cuts in this budget. And to the gentleman who just spoke from South Carolina, he may need a reminder, and maybe he could do a town hall in his district. He might get an earful. But 74,000 of his constituents receive coverage under the Affordable Care Act. By supporting this resolution, he's betraying the 148,948 constituents in his district that depend on Medicaid for their essential care, and the 85,000 constituents in the 5th District who rely on SNAP to put food on the table. So maybe do a town hall and listen to constituents rather than just big donors. At this point, I'd like to yield 1 minute and 15 seconds to the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. The gentlelady from Minnesota, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. She says the American people voted for this. No, the American people didn't vote for higher bank fees. They didn't vote to have banks rip them off. Maybe they did in Minnesota, but nowhere else in the country do I think the American people voted for that. And, you know, I would just urge my Republican friends to do your job, We haven't even finished last year's appropriations bills. I mean, we're running up to a deadline in March on a continuing resolution to keep the government open for this year because my friends who are in charge, you know, can't seem to kind of get their act together. So anyway, Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to bring up H.R. 1101, the Taxpayer Data Protection Act. In a matter of days after Donald Trump became president, Elon Musk and his Doge minions gained full access to our government's central payment system at the Treasury Department. And for those watching at home, that's your data. It's your tax refunds, your Social Security benefits, your veterans benefits. It's your bank account numbers. And it's disturbing and alarming to hearing House Republicans talk about unelected bureaucrats and the power that they wield. That is Elon Musk. Your data is in the hands of an unelected billionaire whose only actions thus far have served to help make him and his billionaire friends richer. I don't even know what clearances these people have. Thank goodness a federal judge just days ago blocked Musk's access to this data. But Republicans and Musk are not stopping. Just this morning, and you can't make this stuff up, but just this morning, Republican Representative Eli Crane from Arizona says he's going to impeach the judge who blocked Musk. I mean, really? That is why we must consider the Taxpayer Data Protection Act and ensure that our nation's payment systems and your data are protected. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record along with any extraneous materials immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
And Mr. Speaker, to discuss our proposal, I'm happy to yield 2 minutes to the sponsor of this legislation, the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Stevens.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much to my profound and wise colleague, the ranking member of the Rules Committee and former Chairman Jim McGovern. He's absolutely right that H.R. 1101, the Taxpayer Data Protection Act, which I was so pleased to author and introduce last week alongside my colleague Sean Casten and alongside our Democratic leadership, is where we need to move. We need to ensure that we have some guardrails in our Treasury Department. I was a former Treasury Department official myself in the very beginning days of a new administration, the administration of Barack Obama, when actually a bipartisan group of us came together to respond to the economic and fiscal crisis of the time. I was put on the auto rescue team, the team responsible for saving General Motors and Chrysler from liquidation. And again, it was a bipartisan effort, and it saved 200,000 Michigan jobs and millions of jobs across the country. And nowhere in that process, when we were working with the Troubled Asset Relief Program dollars, did anyone dare to think about going into the Bureau of Fiscal Service and to tapping the wires in the accounts of the American public and jolting and shaking the very foundation of trust. And so this bill is a very simple measure of saying, let's make sure that we've got true public servants, people who have passed protocols, people who have top security clearance, people who don't have conflicts of interest. The American people deserve that modicum of trust. And you know what's even more outrageous, Mr. Speaker? Is we're talking about the rulemaking and the rollbacking and the ways in which we choose to legislate here. Why are we not talking about the costs that are impacting everyday Americans? I got sworn in on January 3rd into the 119th Congress, and I'm waiting for the bill. I'm waiting for the bill to lower egg costs. I'm seeing headlines that eggs are being stolen. I am hearing from constituents, yes, who are nervous about Elon Musk having access to their records and their payment system, but they're wondering why they can't go to the grocery store and find eggs. They're wondering about the high costs of everything. They're wondering why prescription drugs are about to go up because of an executive order. Where are we working on that? So yes, let's pass the amendment. Let's do H.R. 1101, and let's get back to the business for the people of this country. Thank you. I yield back.